This RealAg Radio podcast is brought to you by Authority 480 herbicide from FMC. Authority 480 herbicide provides extended activity on the toughest weeds like kochia, wild buckwheat, cleavers, Russian thistle, and many more. See your local retailer today for more information.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Tuesday edition of the show. Hey, thanks so much for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your work day. And of course, a big shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. Well, today's a bit of a celebration. That's right. It's Canada's Ag Day today. So in different parts of the country, there are celebrations going on. Really cheering and celebrating, almost like it's an anniversary or birthday party. Just the industry, the agriculture, and what it represents in the country. And there's a historical context to this, and we think back to the evolutions and changes that our industry has made over the course of time, and where we have come from, and the root that it is to some of the pioneers that settled in different parts of Canada, and that rich history and heritage of really not only feeding Canadians, but it has worked its way to feeding the world through exports as well. But also looking forward, and we're going to hear about that a little bit today, I think, in regards to that look ahead and the opportunity that is in front of Canadian agriculture, whether that is from an economic development standpoint, being a huge part of the economic growth of the country with that opportunity, and food security, not just in Canada but around the world, and making affordability being a part of that too, which is a very, very important political word right now in the country. That based on some of the voting patterns we have seen, people are really thinking about affordability, and food is a component of that. And the other side of it is things like sustainability, for example, being also a part of the opportunity in Canada. A lot of times agriculture is being harped on as some sort of problem when it comes to emissions and climate change and all these kinds of things. And we're always going to have activists. But, we're also, we know this, that we're also part of the solution. And we're willing to participate in that. And we're going to hear from some of our guests today all about this. So we are kind of celebrating Canada's Ag Day today here on the program. Looking forward to it. So who is on the show? So there's an event going on in Ottawa today, hosted by Farm Credit Canada and Ag More Than Ever, and it's called Future of Food. So this is the future theme that I was just mentioning. We're going to hear today from Justine Hendricks. She's the CEO of Farm Credit Canada. I got some questions for her, and in terms of what this day means to Farm Credit, but at the same time, also what role do bankers play in the future of the industry and the future of food and things like that. We've also got a conversation with Murad Al Katib. Now, he is the president and CEO of AGT Foods. Really a homegrown story when it comes to Canadian agriculture and being really that pathway to exports around the world in a number of different commodities. And we're also going to hear from Alanna Koch. She's a farmer from Edenwald, Saskatchewan. Also very heavily involved in a lot of things in Saskatchewan from a policy perspective. She is very much a builder. And Alanna hosted a panel today at the event, and it was entitled Canada's Moonshot. She had executives from 3 major companies in Canadian agriculture. You're going to know the names very, very well, as they have global plays as well. We'll get a summary of some of the things they talked about from a sustainability standpoint. We've also got Product Spotlight today with Huston Brabandere. He is with Nufarm. We're going to talk about TriActor and some of the things that it has to offer the market. If you have any feedback on today's show, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find us across all the different social media platforms, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. I shouldn't say Twitter, I should say X. We got Instagram, we got Threads, TikTok. We got it all. We're on all of those platforms. You can also call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Let's take a break. And when we come back, we've got Justine Hendricks. She is the CEO of Farm Credit Canada. the largest agricultural lender in the country. We'll talk to her when we come back. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. We're joined right now by Philip Korzak. He's the Director of Sales for Western Canada for Vaderstad, based out of Saskatchewan. If somebody's never had a seed hawk in the field before, why would you look at purchasing one?
Really, one of the keys that has been to our success that lasted so long is our dual knife seed and fertilizer system. We do believe that we are the most accurate seeding tool in the market for seed placement. And the key component, not only with that seed placement, is also the fertilizer location. But we really feel that the dual knife system with the separation horizontally and vertically is really what's going to ultimately give that crop, especially a small seeded crop and high value crop like canola, easy access to those nutrients very early on and quick emergence. But equally important with that quick emergence is the even emergence.
If somebody wants more information on Vaderstad, how do they find it, Philip?
You know what? You can go to our website. It's very simple. It's just www.vaderstad.com.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is your one-stop shop for everything a canola grower needs. Check out our free video series on YouTube for all the latest in canola agronomy, research, marketing, and more. Don't have time to watch? Download the podcast version of the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com or anywhere you download your podcasts. Stay on top of all things canola with the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
We're having a lot of fun here today with the Future of Food event in Ottawa for Canada's Ag Day. But coming up on March 5th through the 7th is the Canadian Crops Convention in Winnipeg. This year's theme is Growing Opportunities and includes a stellar lineup of knowledgeable speakers and great networking opportunities. Check out what the Canola Council of Canada and the Canadian Grains Council have planned, and you can also register by going to canadiancrops.ca. Before we bring in Justine Hendricks, Chief Executive Officer at Farm Credit Canada, I want to get your opinions here. I'm always asking for your feedback. Curious what some of your thoughts are when we talk about the celebration of Canadian agriculture here for Canadian Ag Day. What are the things that come to mind? What is it about this industry of agriculture that gets you excited, that made you want to either come back to the farm or the ranch, or maybe work in industry? Maybe you're a researcher, maybe you're in the executive suite. Whatever your role is in this industry, love to hear from you on what really drives you on a daily basis. But attached to that too is, where do you think some of the biggest room for improvement is? What are the things that we need to do going forward where we'll look back and we'll say that we did make the right changes at that moment in 2024? So you can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or of course you can always call that RealAg feedback line. It is 855-776-6147. Would love to get as much feedback as we possibly can. And we are joined right now by the Chief Executive Officer with Farm Credit Canada. It is Justine Hendricks. Justine, great to see you.
Great to see you too.
Okay, so a big event today in Ottawa for Canada's Ag Day, the Future of Food. When you hear that title, what do you think of?
Oh my. When I hear that title, I think of, for one, the opportunity that Canada has in terms of contributing to what food will look like over the course of the following years. This morning we talked a lot about the opportunity for Canada. We talked about it being a generational opportunity in terms of what we can bring to the table. We're a big player around the world in terms of when it comes to ag and food, and, how we kind of seize this and, combine our efforts through collaboration to really make an impact. We can tackle and help solve some pretty big challenges that are impacting all of us around the world.
A lot of times we're super busy in our lives, and that's family, and that's our careers and our family farm operations. You probably identify with this too, and the time sort of just flies by.
Yeah,
and we don't take the time to celebrate. And to me, that's kind of what today is about with Canada's Ag Day. It's kind of celebrating just the contribution this industry and the people make to just society in Canada in general.
Yeah, it's great how you position it because I believe this is our 8th year. So, I'm on my 2nd year on the roll. And I have to tell you, I mean, we sold out, right? So, I mean, the interest is constantly growing. And you're right, like people want to take a pause, right? So it's a great time for get everybody in industry together. We tackle some all sorts of topics, bring some new ideas to the table. But what it is, and it goes beyond the event of today, right? What you see in Ottawa is that many of the associations end up having their annual general meeting during this week. So it kind of ends up being kind of a big buzz in town about ag and food. So you're right, like, and it's important to do. And I was reflecting this morning when I look at the timing of it, after Christmas, beginning of February, it really kind of kicks off the year for the industry in a really neat way.
Yeah, for sure. So as you were sitting in the audience there today, what were your takeaways? What were some of the things maybe that you learned today as because there was a pretty awesome agenda. So
Yeah.
lots to learn.
Yeah. No, there's tons to learn. The thing is about innovation, right? So to me, I mean, if we look at some of the different panels, we heard from some of the major players in Canada in terms of how they're looking to contribute from an innovative perspective, right? Some of them are like doing testing on farmland. They're inviting people to come and actually see for themselves. So there's this element of being transparent about it. So we learned lots about that. What we also learned is some of the big players, like we had McDonald's, we had McCain, how they're working together, right? So back to this collaboration between us or amongst us, which is allowing us to, I would argue, go faster, be more comprehensive in our testing, and then together we can move forward. I must say, I love the one about leadership, right? We had 3 panelists, different backgrounds altogether, really being able to describe how they got to where they are today, but how it actually connects to what they do each and every day in their role and kind of their motivation for the future. So that was really neat. I think of what we just heard of from Murad in terms of Murad always brings to the table that global view. He shakes us up all the time, but in a really good way, right? Like he knows where the opportunities are. And he comes to this conference with always some really tangible examples. So, it's gone from you could almost say from the local to the global, right? And all the way through, we've weaved in leadership, right? In terms of, whether it's at the individual, at the regional perspective, and then you look at the globe opportunity for Canada. So it kind of makes a pretty a comprehensive agenda, as you said.
Yeah, and one of the things, you just said go faster. And I thought of the fact that, I've had numerous people who've done interviews with over the past number of years where they say that Canada is really good at like identifying an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
But then we sort of like don't necessarily go as fast as you just sort of like go fast to it. We sort of take our time and one person had said we're victims of trying to be perfect and create this perfect sort of like path.
Yeah.
Why did you mention go fast? Why is that so critical in today's global environment?
So there's 2 reasons I think it's important. And, I mentioned it in my opening remarks. First, I think we have to recognize that in order to solve some of the big problems and opportunities. So this morning was about, health, climate change, sustainability. We need to recognize that we actually need to make mistakes. So to me, we talked about some of the targets we have. We don't have that many growing seasons. So for me, fast is about, making those mistakes, and through those mistakes, you get your wins. But if we wait too long, as you say, we identify an opportunity and then we sit and we wait, we're actually not learning fast enough to be able to get to the right solution. So that is for me what, whether we collaborate, so, being complementary with other players within the ecosystem, whether, we heard too about how do we leverage more our universities or our colleges, right, that can do applied research to kind of accelerate that pace. I think we have to connect with the globe too, right? And we heard tons of examples today about I guess, kind of almost turning the problem sometimes on its head and trying to take maybe the least predictable inputs to actually help solve a problem and find a solution. That's to me what we have to do. And that's what we have to accelerate so we can learn what we need to learn, make the mistakes, and then find that solution and then scale it. I think is another thing we heard a lot about today, scaling the Canadian capability for helping what we're trying to achieve globally.
Yeah, you made me think of the famous McKinsey consultant Tom Peters, who I remember being in one of his presentations one time, and he talked about how one slide was like, don't fall into the trap of like aim, fire. It needs to be like fire, right?
Yeah. No, and the other analogy, what we're hearing, so, being it's Canada's National Ag Day, we just heard, right? Do the Gretzky thing, follow where the puck is going, right? Don't just follow the puck, right? Yeah. So, and you can really sense in the crowd, this evolution and this desire. So I think people are pretty jazzed today and pretty excited about seeing how we can do more.
Okay. So what do you think if they said, okay, Justine, you're summing up the day today. Okay, because a part of this is now, okay, we've had a great discussion. Mm-hmm. Now it's like the so what moment. Now it's like, what are the action items? If you could write out what the action items need to be, what would they look like? What would they be? What would you tell people? Okay, leaving this room today, here's what we got to do.
Well, so the first thing is, and it's coming through in every presentation, we got to do a better job at telling our story. Like that's the start, right? So, and to be honest with you, I think that is an important contributor that the industry needs in order to continue with being energized and focused. So how do we tell the story? This collaboration has to accelerate, right? So, sometimes I think in Canada, Canada's a pretty big country. How do we actually share across the country what we're doing so that we can go faster? So how do we take that collaboration piece to the next level? We heard loud and clear, we need investment. It can't just be government. We need the private sector to come. And I believe with industry, if I look at, our role with FCC in terms of what are the products that we need to support the industry that needs to invest, whether in a new innovation, whether we've got new startups. So how do we keep a pulse on the market of what are those changing needs? We need to recognize what those risks are, but we need to really support the industry in order to get there. So that's kind of how I would summarize it in a nutshell in terms of what are the next steps.
Well, you live in the financial world.
Yes.
So when you say attract more investment, what does that look like? What do we have to do? Just go on more junkets and say, hey, Canada's a great place. The water's warm. Join us in this party, or what do we have to do?
So yes, and we need to bring data. But we do, right? I think it's the data, and you heard it today. The data is speaking for itself, right? When you look at some of the progress the beef industry's done, the milk industry's done, every panelist, I think, had a stat that demonstrated the value and the credibility of the Canadian egg and food industry. And we don't share enough. So sometimes, you would know this, Shaun, you have to know your audience and how do you speak to that audience, right? So I think number one, putting some numbers behind it so that we can attract that capital. We need to showcase the innovation where it exists. And we need to also be able to take it to a point where we can scale it, right? So it's one thing to create, but in order to be able to scale it, and Canada around the world, we position ourselves and are one of the big players. That scalability, and we heard about some of the investments that are required in the country for infrastructure and so forth. That's the piece that we also have to make sure we can deliver on.
And when we say scale it, we mean being able to go big in a productive, efficient manner and make the largest impact as well, correct? Or how do you define that?
No, absolutely. I mean, and more, I think, and that's what's super exciting, I'd say, and inspiring for all of us, and newcomers to the industry. There's got to be a purpose at the end of the day of all of this, right? So, I mean, part of Big Canada's pride is, knowing that we're a major contributor to feeding the world. Lives are changing, diets are changing. And the belief is we've got the ingredients in this country, along with some innovation, to be able to take that to the next level. And that's what Canada Canada is all about. And if you look at kind of the standards we have in Canada, it gives us a global reputation. So how do we take those and bring it even further into the opportunities that are around the world? That is exactly what we mean.
It's a heavy lift, though, because of the diversity of the industry. Right? If we were talking about, okay, we're going to do all this for the airline industry, I use them as the example all the time because there's like two major carriers, there's a few sub carriers, and they're all the same pretty much. They're flying the same planes, they're dealing with the same unions. Like they're really, really very, very similar, and so that's an easier lift from a certain perspective because you're not dealing with the broadness and the diversity scale that we are in like just go to Saskatchewan and look at the differences from farm to farm. Never mind Quebec to BC. That's a little bit of the challenge here.
It is a huge part of the challenge. And I believe data plays a big part in that, right? At the end of the day, right? Because if we start from Canada, right, there's a story that Canada can tell. Canada can say a story, and I fundamentally believe every province has a contribution. So Saskatchewan does its part, Quebec is strong in certain areas. So to me, the next step that we really need to do is to actually bring that together. But you're right, it is complicated. And I think some of the other thing too within the industry, and this is where you hear a lot about the collaboration. Some subsectors are further ahead than others, right? And what you're also starting to hear in the dialogue that I'd argue maybe you didn't hear as much 3-4 years ago is how, let's say you'd say the beef sector is actually looking to dairy to see, well, maybe there's techniques there that we can benefit from. So before it was more, everybody would stay in their silo, right? We knew it really well. And it was about how do you position yourself vis-a-vis others? But that's the big change is you're seeing different subsectors looking at others saying, hey, maybe there's something they're doing there that can make a difference. So we're trying. And that to me is the change, right? That we're starting to witness. And that's what gives me a lot of positive sentiment towards, I think we can really make this happen.
That's what I've been preaching for a long time. So finally, people are finally listening. Okay, this is awesome stuff. Okay, Justine, thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations on Canada's Ag Day and the Future of Food event. Really, really appreciate it. It was great to chat with you.
Super. Thank you. Take care, Shaun.
Oh, love talking to Justine. She's a bundle of energy. She is excited. I love the passion and enthusiasm. Okay, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to do a product spotlight with Nufarm, and then we're going to continue on covering the Future of Food event in Ottawa and Canada's Ag Day. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147.
Co-op knows your community because we live here too. Our teams are your trusted partners with a range of expertise to help support your entire farm operation. And we're giving back. In the past 5 years, Co-op has invested over $1.1 billion in the prairies through building, upgrading, and expanding local facilities. And we've returned over $1.17 billion to Co-op members in the prairies. Co-op, we're all building something for the future. Here for your farm, here for your family. Learn more at coop.crs/farm. Joining me on the line is Barry Mann. He's the Vice President of Investor Relations for Genesis Fertilizers, and we're talking about an exciting project.
So the project is essentially bringing farmers together to create a vertically integrated fertilizer company based on the prairies, and it's to give farmers the opportunity to take advantage of the abundant supply that we have of natural gas, create our own nitrogen fertilizer from that, and deliver direct to the farm.
Investing in this project, a farmer that does, they're still going to pay market price for the product, but they're going to see a benefit in the payback after.
Yeah, I think you've pretty well summarized it. With the vertical integration, we're not out to bust the market. It's going to join the market. So yeah, we'll be selling it at market price, but because the farmers are the owners, because they're the shareholders, they just also are going to happen to be the customer. Based on the amount of fertilizer that they use on their farm, the average farmer is taking an ownership stake in the project based on those tons, so that at the end of the day, those profits come back to the farm.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. It's now time for a product spotlight with Nufarm. We're joined right now by Huston de Brabandere. He's a territory manager for South Central Ontario with Nufarm. Huston, how's it going?
Hey, Shaun. I'm good. How are you doing?
Hey, man, I'm doing fantastic. I'm looking forward to spring, and depending on where you are in the country, spring kind of feels like it's in the air, depending on what week it is. But now, With planting still, it's getting closer. It is a couple months away, but it is getting closer. What planting advice can you give to someone wanting to maximize their IP premiums this year on the farm?
Right. Well, I think when I'm thinking about maximizing these premiums, it really comes down to two functions. And the main one, it's all about getting the best contract for your farm. And that means not only finding, what's the best premium per bushel you can find, but more importantly, how well suited is that bean to your farm? And, that encompasses, what's the yield potential? Does that bean, like your soil type, your heat range? And we're going to work with your planter setup, because there may be a lot of good premiums out there, but if the bean's not right for your farm, you're not going to get the best return. The next big factor for realizing that potential is the weed control. We need to get our beans off with good quality, and we can't control the weather, but we can control the weeds. So if it were me thinking about this today, I'm going to be thinking about, what do I have to work with? What kind of shape are my fields in, and are they going to be ready for a conventional bean crop? If I took over a piece of land this past year and it's got a mess of perennial weeds and other unknowns, no, probably not the best spot. But if my fields are in good condition, then we're just thinking about pre-seed preparation, burn down or tillage, and then laying down the best residual program I can find.
So, Huston, do you have a recommendation on which program's your favorite?
Yeah, so my favorite, and obviously full disclosure, I'm the Nufarm rep, and this is my product, is TriActor EZ. The weed control is excellent, and this product really is true to its name. It's got to be the easiest product on the market right now. 3 residual herbicides pre-mixed together in one jug with a low use rate, half a liter to the acre. It's just easy mixing, less to handle, less jugs to clean, and the weed control is really great. We're getting excellent control of fleabane, water hemp, nightshade, ragweed, and all our worst common annual culprits.
Great stuff. Now, if somebody wants more information about TriActor EZ, where do they go?
So there's many ways. First off, I was looking at start searching online. They can call me or Adam or Joe or Gilbert, depending on where they are. And we're all listed, our profiles on nufarm.ca, and we'd be happy to talk it through with you.
Great stuff. Huston, thanks for joining us here today on RealAg Radio.
Oh, thank you very much, Shaun.
Again, Nufarm's website is nufarm.ca. Okay, today we're celebrating Canada's Ag Day, and there's people getting together really across the country at different events and functions. Lindsay was in, I think, Sudbury yesterday in an event that very connected as well to Canada's Ag Day. So there's lots to celebrate in our industry, and we're going to continue to do so here on the show. When we come back, we've got 2 more conversations. One, we're going to hear from Alanna Koch. She is farmer from Edenwald, Saskatchewan. Going to hear about the panel that she hosted at the Future of Food event today in Ottawa. And we're also going to hear from next Murad Al Katib. He is the president and CEO, founder of AGT Foods, and he's going to talk about Canada's role when it comes to global food security and the opportunity that's in front of it for Canadian farmers. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
Does your N stabilizer contain an active ingredient load high enough to be agronomically effective? If not, it could be costing you time and money. If you're putting down a nitrogen stabilizer, put your trust in Koch Agronomic Services. Solutions like Super U, Tribune, and Anvil. Each delivers high active ingredient concentrations that low-rate products just can't match. Compare how imitator products stack up to agronomically effective solutions at defendyourn.ca.
Whether you're a rookie soybean grower or a seasoned vet, the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com has exactly what you need to stay in the game. The latest research and the best agronomic advice from industry experts, along with local and global market coverage on demand, anywhere, anytime. Make this growing season your best growing season with the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com.
This segment of RealAg Radio is brought to you by FP Genetics, innovative seed genetics for Canadian farmers. Contact your local FP dealer or territory manager to discuss your certified seed strategy specific to your region. Visit fpgenetics.ca to learn more. It is Canada's Ag Day today, so there are get-togethers across the country. One of the main ones, of course, is happening in Ottawa. One of the keynote speakers is Murad Al Katib. He is President and CEO of AGT Foods. Murad, how's it going?
Yeah, it's great. Nice day in Ottawa today.
Absolutely. Here in the middle of February, which is hard to believe. So today you're going to be keynoting to the audience about nourishing the future, Canada's impact on global food security. Of course, coming out of the pandemic, food security is a topic very much being discussed, as well as affordability for that matter. In your opinion, as somebody that is, doing business really in the food sector around the world, what role does Canada play in global food security?
Well, I think, what we're going to talk about today at the Ag Day in Canada is that, Canada's importance is actually growing. And, when we turn around and talk about that affordability and the food inflation, we're at a position now in the world where, we may be in recent history, or maybe in history overall, we haven't had more people facing food insecurity than we face today. And, that affordability piece, Shaun, food inflation and the price of food is high on the minds of every foreign government in the world. And I think that, we recognize that the lack of arable land and water is the two scarcest resources in the world, and Canada has an abundance of those resources. And, when I look at, kind of the importance going forward, whether it be Canada's geopolitical importance, our ability to, have a voice at the table, as world economies grow and our economy is not growing as fast, we need something to make sure we're very relevant. And food and agriculture is really that key weapon, that Canada has. So we're a societal solution, to that food insecurity. And I think that, climate change is playing into that, in that our variability, it hasn't felt like it, let's say in Saskatchewan and out west with the droughts of 3 consecutive years. But, we certainly have a more reliable production system than almost any other jurisdiction in the world. We're getting colder as it's getting to harvest. We're not getting hotter. And that gives a lot more tolerance to drought and a lot more reliability on crop. And I think that's, kind of a high level importance, is that land and water availability.
So this is how we see ourselves, right? You just said it, and I've heard it from others that, Canada has this massive opportunity to play this big role. As you talk to customers, people around the world, do they see Canada that way, or is there a gap?
Well, definitely they're seeing Canada that way. I mean, again, I had a very proud moment a couple of months ago. Some of the very first trucks that rolled through the humanitarian corridor to Gaza were AGT trucks, taking, Canadian products to the Palestinian refugees. When I look at our refugee relief programs, government procurement programs, Algeria, Iraq, Kuwait, Egypt, the governments of the world are looking at Canada as a reliable source. It's a direct source, direct to the farm. It's a reliable source year after year after year as they fight food inflation, as they go to subsidized distribution of basic commodities to stabilize, their growing in food insecurity. These are, again, part of the world looking at Canada as that societal solution. And, we've taken a view that a Canadian company, that AGT has become, we have to have global supply chains. We have to be linked. We have to have freight options out of Canada, both in container and in vessel. We have to have warehouses, processing facilities, repacking facilities in key jurisdictions like Turkey that is close to the refugees and close to the, conflicts that we're seeing around the world. So Canadian connectivity to global value chains is a big part of that societal solution. And, again, that's something that we're trying to play a role in, and something that, you see a number of other Canadian companies playing into today.
One of the things that does concern me is, and it's not in all countries that we're dealing with, but there is somewhat of a more political flair to talk about being protectionist. And as a company, or as a country like Canada that is very, very export reliant from a GDP perspective, and you've talked about the opportunities in front of us, how big of a threat is protectionism to Canada's ability to deliver on this, seizing the moment in terms of fulfilling some of the opportunities with global food security?
I think we have to recognize one thing. Agriculture is the most political business in the world, in that governments all over the world have an obligation to protect their farmers. And so, domestic agricultural policy is always clashing in many cases with food insecurity and food inflation. So, imagine you're a foreign government wanting to keep prices high to benefit your rural economy where a lot of the votes are in a lot of these countries. And at the same time, you're fighting food inflation. So that's, kind of the clash of policy that we end up, facing. And I think that, the key for Canada is to have a diversified set of markets. We can't be so reliant only on China and India, as major markets for our agricultural commodities. We have to have a basket so that if one large country pulls out, we have to have another way to access that market. Let's look at the canola crisis in China. Anyone who thinks that a lot less canola went into China during the canola crisis from Canada isn't looking at the trade flows. Our trade went to the roof in the UAE, and our canola was going there, and canola oil from the UAE was going to China. Okay, so, again, global value chains insulate us against the geopolitical and policy changes that we see. Look at the India policy. This year, first year, peas were reallowed for import from January to March. Why? They need the product. So we're going to see kind of a hybrid policy. We're going to see, I think, more markets reacting like Turkey, where they restrict imports from May until September every year at the time of their crop. And so they do that to protect their domestic ag. Their prices are high during those periods. And then they allow import to regulate prices for food security and food inflation. So we're going to see kind of hybrid policies that are going to be balancing those two policy objectives. But the key is, Shaun, we can't put all our eggs in one or two baskets, because then those governments have too much impact on our agriculture.
Yeah, well put. Now, I know that, it's no secret, Murad, you're a very influential person in all of this space in the Canadian market, and people listen to what you're saying. Let's just say the Prime Minister invites you into a cabinet meeting and says, okay, Murad, we hear you. Great opportunity in front of us. What do we need to do as a country? What are you telling them?
Well, I guess I'm fortunate. I've had the opportunity to sit with the Prime Minister recently and talk about the opportunity in agriculture. And, I think that, there's a strong recognition across all party lines, which I think is the best part of where agriculture sits today. Whether you're a liberal or you're a conservative, today there's a recognition that agriculture is a sector that is delivering immediate economic growth and opportunity for Canada. When I chaired the National Strategy Table for Agriculture and Food, we set the target to take exports from 45 billion to 85 billion by 2023. The sector met the target in 2021, 2 years ahead of our target. And when we set 85 billion, it was a very lofty target, is what people thought. So, how many sectors of our economy can deliver 40 billion of new economic output in a short 3-year period? So there's a recognition that it's about jobs and economic opportunity. The second thing is that as we look at the new green, clean economy, agriculture is a major polluter. Okay, so don't get worried because I'm in agriculture. We're also society's solution to climate change. We're one of the major solutions. So when we take digital agriculture and we put it over top of, smart fertilization, zero minimum tillage, and data-based precision farming, the carbon intensity of agriculture in Canada, with the scale of our agriculture, has a massive opportunity to decline. So we are, in a position where not only are we a societal solution to food security, we're also a societal model for climate change and sustainability. And I think that's going to bode well. And that's, what I would tell the Prime Minister. And I actually say, if I was Prime Minister for a day, I would invest $100 billion over the next 3 or 4 years to improve the trade infrastructure of Canada.
Yeah.
Because we have to move goods to market. And when we look at, the Western Canadian economy, agriculture, critical minerals, and the energy sector are major drivers of the, overall economic well-being of all Canadians. not just those of us in Western Canada.
Yeah, you can have customers around the world, but if you can't get the product to them when they want it in time, then you've got a major gap.
Absolutely. I mean, this is all about reliability. It's all about all the things that we need. So, trade infrastructure is something that, I think government has made some small steps in, but, again, we need to do more.
And we know there's an opportunity here. I think, too, we also need to make sure we're fighting complacency. Like, because there's a trap here where we're like, we're awesome. We've got, we're the breadbasket. We've got all this opportunity in front of us. We need to fight complacency and continue to charge ahead to make sure that we do seize this, right?
Yeah, I think that there's, here's where I think we've got a strong defense there, is that our farmers have proven time and time again, Shaun, that they are early adopters of technology. And so, again, as long as that innovation pipeline continues to move along, farmers are showing how quickly they can commercialize. I mean, we've taken 2 kilograms of seed and turned it into 200,000 acres of a new pulse, as an example. Again, you can't do that in other countries. So, again, that's where I have an optimism that complacency won't come because of work ethic and because of that early adopter of technology mindset. And the family farm today is changing. I mean, the scale continues to grow. And, again, I haven't seen so many young faces, MBAs, college educated, and, very, very intelligent business people running Canadian farm family businesses today. That's going to help us.
Well put. Murad, great to catch up with you. All the best today in your keynote. It's great to chat. Always learn so much from you, and all the best of luck and continued success with AGT Foods.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
When we come back on RealAg Radio, we're going to continue our coverage of Canada's Ag Day. Next, we're talking to Alanna Koch. She's a farmer from Edenwald, Saskatchewan. She just moderated a panel of extremely heavy hitters when it comes to the Canadian ag industry. We'll hear from her when we come back. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Get all the information you need to keep your pulse crop healthy and profitable with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School is a free YouTube video series covering agronomy, research, and more across a host of different pulse crops. It's also available as an audio podcast wherever you download or stream your favorite podcast. Check us out on YouTube or visit RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School, brought to you by BSF Canada.
What's next for your fields? At Pioneer, delivering industry-leading genetics drives everything we do. From the scientists in the lab to our local teams with boots on the ground, we are determined to get there first. Developing top-performing products, proven in more growing conditions than ever before. Pioneer. What's next happens here. Visit pioneer.com/Canada to learn more.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio, covering Canada's Ag Day today. We've been tapping into this Future of Food event that's happening in Ottawa, Ontario, our nation's capital. This segment's brought to you by Co-op. Co-op knows your community because we live here too. Our teams are your trusted partners with a range of expertise to help support your entire farm operation. Co-op, here for your farm, here for your family. Learn more at Co-op. And here's the website, okay? co-op.crs/farm. Okay, we are joined right now by Edenwald's own of Saskatchewan, a farmer from that area. It is Alanna Koch. Hey, Alanna, how's it going?
Great, Shaun. Nice to see you on Canada's Ag Day.
Yeah, exactly. It's great to see you too. Okay, you just did a panel. You're like fresh off the stage. They basically like grabbed you and ushered you into this room so we could have this conversation. Now, I've moderated a lot of panels. You had some heavy industry hitters. The panel name was Canada's Moonshot. Now, before we get into what the panelists said, what exactly are we talking about here? What is Canada's Moonshot allegedly?
Well, basically, we were saying that Canada's Moonshot is about the opportunity that comes out of sustainability and the fact that Canada is a leader in agricultural sustainability. So how is that a key driver for Canada? How is it our moonshot? What are we going to do to take us even further regarding ag sustainability because of what we've already accomplished, and what more can we do?
As a farmer, how do we connect return on investment to that? Right? Because a lot of people get trapped in this ideological, like, hey, our moonshot is here, is, we're going to, save the planet. But there's an economic reality here. So how does, for you as a farmer, how does that play into it?
Well, this is exactly what, I was hoping to hear today. We did talk about it. This is a challenge for farmers. We're told, do better, invest more, be sure to innovate, quickly adopt. And lots of times people aren't thinking about, but is that profitable? Does that work for your business? And some of it becomes sort of a little prescriptive. We want you to do this, this, and this, but you don't get a premium for that. So, I think that's the challenge for us as farmers. We know we're constantly investing, constantly innovating. The return has to come from the market, and it can't be based on some artificial framework. So it has to make sense. I think it has made sense, but let's not bury us in costs. Let's make sure we incentivize the right behaviors and give us the premium if we are better than others. And I think in many cases we are better than the rest of the world. So where's the premium in that? For sure, It is about market access, though, Shaun. I think that's something we need to remember. It keeps us in markets. That's pretty important for me as a farmer to think about. When I think about Canada being the world's 5th largest agri-food exporter, market access is huge. I think our sustainable measures help keep us in markets and help us grow markets.
Yeah, I should have mentioned at the beginning that you are the board chair for the Global Institute for Food Security as well. Now, your panelists, we've got Michael McCain, executive chair for Maple Leaf Foods, got Ken Seitz, who is president and CEO of Nutrien, and you had John Stackhouse, senior VP, Office of the CEO at the Royal Bank of Canada. So I guess summarize for us, what did the panelists have to say about this? You just told us your perspective as a farmer. What did the panelists have to say?
Well, what we talked about at the panel, and you look, we had a big part of the value chain up on the stage at the same time, some real powerhouse speakers, obviously, but each brought their own perspective on, what is the challenge of sustainability? What's the opportunity? And then they also talked collectively about how they're all members of CANZA, which is the Canadian Alliance for Net Zero Emissions Agriculture. And it's, just launched last fall. So they talked about their role in that and how they think it's really about piloting sustainability and, what falls out of the value of our sustainable practices in Canada and, kind of early stages of that. But they all reflected on that, how they think it's been a successful launch. They have much more work to do on measurement and deciding what success looks like for sure.
Yeah. I have to think that a lot of the audience, farmers and ranchers that are listening to the program, they don't get sort of like itchy. I don't know what the reaction is, but they get concerned. I hear about it from the audience. When we talk about sustainability initiatives, we hear a lot of like, this needs to be farmer led and not left totally in the hands of industry. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I always say not about farmers without farmers, and Ken Seitz was really realistic about that today from Nutrien. He said, hey, we can come in and we can say, here's the practices we want, and here's the inputs that we can help you provide, and here's what food companies and consumers are looking for. But he said, if it doesn't make sense for the farmer and we can't explain it to the farmer and the farmer doesn't see value in it, none of it matters. So, I think he was very realistic today on the panel. And that's, I think, what makes us nervous as farmers is don't come in and tell us how to do our business. Tell us, what are the needs of the market? We'll get to where we need to because agriculture is so diverse across the country. Even operation to operation within, my province is different. Yeah. And so it can't be prescriptive. There has to be, regional understanding of what works in one place isn't necessarily going to work in the other. What works in one sector isn't going to work, in another. So that, kind of understanding that it's got to be the practices that make sense, that are practically, possible. And yes, good environmental sustainable outcomes, but then we also think about economic outcomes that have to be sustainable, as well as social sustainability, which comes with communities because we have a lot of farmers in the area that help, keep those communities alive. It all goes together. It's not just an environmental lens, right?
It's definitely a complex puzzle. Do you now you worked in government, so you understand it. Because of the variability that we have and in trying to recognize some of those regional differences, even inside the province, right? So irrigated land around Outlook different than, maybe a ranch down in East End, or, we could come up with lots of examples. Do you think that that's one of the challenges is trying to sell all this to the consumer in trying to talk about what we're doing? Because there is a lot of differences. It's not just like the industry is doing this. We can just plant a flag and really make it simplistic. It's trouble to get, it can be a struggle when we have to explain nuances. And we have a lot of nuance in our industry.
That's true. I mean, the challenge is there is lots of differences. Every sector has its own kind of unique qualities. But I think what's fundamental for all of us, Shaun, is, I know maybe it feels overused to say we have to tell our story, but really that's what we have to continue to do is, be transparent, talk about our operations, how I have the same interests as consumers do. I care about the environment. I care about, food safety, nutritious food. I care about my communities the same way as the consumer does. So I invite them in. I talk about my operation, why I do what I do, how I'm going to do better. And man, if the conversation doesn't begin there, then there's no conversation at all. So it doesn't matter what we're farming, where we're farming. We've got to be able to tell our story, to anybody and to all who will listen. And I think that's the only way we're going to kind of have those shared interests and be able to maintain public trust and continue to build on that.
Now, all three of the panelists connected to very large organizations, publicly traded. Did any of them talk about the influence that, a Bay Street or a Wall Street has on what their companies are doing in the area of sustainability?
Interesting, because I asked several questions as the moderator to these powerhouse panelists about sustainability. What's the driver? What are you excited about? What do you think is next? What's the measure of success? What's the call to action? None of them talked about their shareholders. None of them talked about kind of what we think we're hearing coming out of Wall Street. I mean, part of it is, maybe this wasn't the audience to tell that story, but part of it is, I'm not sure that maybe is as front of mind as it might have been even just a year to 18 months ago. I feel like maybe that's sliding a little way. I'm not being unrealistic. I know that's still a pressure for them, but I feel like there's other drivers in place here that, we've got to do the right thing. There has to be value in doing the right thing. How do we make sure everybody benefits along the value chain? I think they all get it, that farmers have pushed back enough to say to the bank and to the nutrients and to the food companies, hey, don't come in and tell me how to farm. Hey, as farmers, I know my operation best. But as farmers, we also need to know we can't keep everything the way it is. Proud of what we've already accomplished, and then how are we going to do better and better, right? I think that's about.
Yeah, and like you said, market access is dictates some of this too, right? We've seen this with European canola. We're going to have more and more examples, I think, going forward for sure.
Right. Yeah, and I guess the other thing I'd say is, the other thing that we talked a lot about today, and I mean, this is near and dear to my heart as a farmer and as chair of the Global Institute for Food Security, is innovation is key. So what Ken Seitz talked a lot about is, people ask him all the time, well, are farmers willing to change? Are they willing to adopt new technology? And he said, are you kidding me? Like, farmers only need a small signal and they will invest and they will quickly adopt new technology, and they are about innovation. So that's pretty exciting to think about. I mean, and that's why we are the most sustainable producers of food in the world, is because we've been willing to invest and innovate. And, that's a forever opportunity for us.
Yeah, well put. Well, Alanna, thanks for joining us here today on Canada's Ag Day. Enjoy the celebration there in Ottawa, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for having me, Shaun.
That was Alanna Cook. She is board chair with the Global Institute for Food Security, as well as a farmer with her husband Jerry in Edenwald, Saskatchewan. Oh, great event today happening in Ottawa. We've got more coverage coming throughout the week at RealAgriculture.com. Tomorrow on the show, we're going to be in Louisville, Kentucky for the National Farm Machinery Show, and we're going to do a show with Syngenta Canada. So looking forward to that. If you have any feedback on today's show, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio, and we'll, of course, chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this episode of the RealAg Radio podcast, brought to you by Authority 480 herbicide from FMC. Authority 480 herbicide delivers outstanding control of the toughest broadleaf weeds in wheat, pulse crops, flax, mustard, and more. See your local retailer today for more information.